I am here right now at like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night. I've had a full day. I've been out all day. I've had a million things I had to do. I set up the camera real quick here at home. I'm using a GH5 because that's what I had with me, and I already had, I've been using it all day, and so I was in Queens today, I was in Manhattan, I was in the Bronx. I had a lot of stuff to do. But time is a real thing. And I promised myself that I would be doing this every day for the foreseeable future. And there's really no excuses not to do it unless something reasonable, like, some tragedy or some, it doesn't even have to be a tragedy, but something might take you away that is a good excuse. We have to be human. We have to be somewhat forgiving, but time is a real thing. And to let time go just easily, not to really think about it, not to really consider letting this moment go by, this opportunity go by, this situation that you have in your midst, like right in front of you, is not a smart thing to do. Because time is real, because time is finite. Time in general in the universe, if you're talking about science, it could be infinite, it could be finite. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. But I know time for a human being is finite. And it's also unpredictable. And it is impossible to know what kind of time you have. It's impossible. But what is possible is to control the present time, to control where you're at in this moment right now. And if you've made commitments to yourself, if you've made promises, if you've made promises to somebody else who looks up to you, if you've made commitments to that person, if you have decided to do something and one of these unforeseen kind of, crazy things don't pop up, but you're just kind of tired, or, you're a little lazy, like, I could do this tomorrow. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you do that, it becomes easier and easier to do it every time. But you're developing this muscle. And if you do it, meaning if you do accomplish the goal that you promised yourself that you're going to accomplish, instead of falling prey to the easier way to go, which is to say, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'll do it by the end of the week. It's reasonable. Anybody could understand. You could come up with a million reasons that would be totally valid, that could keep you from taking care of this business right now, where nobody could argue with you, where you'd be like, you could almost make people feel guilty for trying to argue with you, because it's like you would be talking about like real life stuff. You could totally do that. But my question is, why would you do that? What's the purpose in that? What is it really accomplishing? Are you just floating through your life, waiting for things to happen to you, waiting for things to come to you? Wanting things but not expressing the desire to have them, not, taking action to achieve them? Why are you letting time go by? Overthinking things and worrying about fear and, worrying about being perfect, worrying about making mistakes. I mean, anything, any journey, any process has to involve mistakes. You have to make mistakes. You have to screw up to learn, to get better, to achieve something. Anything that you do, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to know how to do everything. I think, like wasting time is a tough thing, and being petty about things. And, this can help you in so many different parts of your life. Relationships, working relationships, personal relationships. Like, understand that time is moving so fast that we are here for a fleeting moment, and to allow certain things to happen to destroy something that you feel is good for your life. There's something that has brought you joy, something that has, made you feel things in your heart and in your soul. If you let them go because you've created rules for yourself, or there's a checklist that people haven't achieved, haven't gotten everything right on your checklist or whatever. And, obviously I'm not just talking about relationships. I'm talking about work. I'm talking about goals. I'm talking about everything. Like, to not understand that nothing is going to be perfect, that nothing is going to be exactly the way you envisioned it, or very little will be exactly as you envisioned it. And in fact, I would argue that the magic is when things don't wind up exactly as you envision them, that you allow yourself to get into the journey, allow yourself to begin, allow yourself to participate, to get involved, and then you don't know what's going to happen because you can't control everything. You can't control hardly anything. You think you can, the best laid plans. I mean, you have to be open to that. You have to free yourself of this control thing. Control what you can control. In my case, I can control, writing a shot list, making a storyboard, writing a script, memorizing a script, learning how to use a camera, learning about the fundamentals of theater, lighting, set design, learning how to produce, how to let people know that you're doing a performance, let people know that you finished a movie, that there's a screening, submitting to festivals. There are many things that you can control, but you can't control the process, like when you come up with the idea, or when you first get into a relationship with somebody, or when you've been in a relationship with somebody for a long time, or you've been at a job forever, or you got a new job, or whatever. You can control that moment. You're here. You're here. But the very next second, you can't control. You have nothing to do with that. It ain't all about you. There are other people involved. There are other things involved. The world is involved. The weather is involved. The news is involved. Politics. Everything can be involved. Unless you live on a desert island all by yourself, where the weather is exactly the same every day. The climate never changes. The environment never changes. There's nothing that you have to deal with that's going to take you off of the way you look at things, the way you feel, the way you plan, unless you live in that, which is impossible. It's impossible. Then you have to free yourself of thinking that you have so much control over everything that you want and that you're doing. But the one thing that you can control is to do it, to activate yourself, to get out there and try. And then you don't know where this next moment is going to lead you, or something new is going to show up and take you somewhere else. And then if you go with it, you take all this experience that you have with you, you take all this, all this like courage that you've had, this energy that you have accumulated, this strength, and you go in a direction where you're not quite comfortable. You're like kind of out of your comfort zone. And surprise yourself. And then you know what? If it doesn't work out, back up a little bit, regroup, kind of identify where you're at, what's around you, what's going on, what are the, what are the things that are affecting this next decision that you have to make, and then make it. Because understand that time is moving. It's not going to stop for anybody. We all have endured so much loss. You might not look at your life that way, but if you stop and think about it, you've lost so much. That's just the nature of life. I know in my case, I think about it all the time. I have endured a lot of loss. The loss of people who I've loved dearly, to death or to just disappearing, just letting things go, not nurturing things, not taking care of things, not being honest about things. Whatever humans do, whatever stupid things that we engage in to, not have the best life that we can possibly have, to not try, to not give it a shot, to not have some confidence in our ability to overcome obstacles, to climb that mountain that looks so high and so overwhelming and like we just can't do it, but you can. You'll find that once you get involved, sometimes something's put in your lap that you have no choice but to deal with it. Sometimes people get pregnant. They're not ready. They didn't plan for it. It just happened. Suddenly they have the baby, and then maybe they don't get the support that they thought they were going to have. Maybe they don't have a partner who's really supportive, who's really there, having her back. Maybe she's now a single mother. When they redid the 2nd Avenue subway in New York City, they had all these beautiful murals of all these representative people of New Yorkers. You know what I mean? Like they tried to represent every kind of New Yorker. They had, construction workers and business people, and then they represented, like they had 2 men holding hands walking down the street. But my favorite mural And I wish I had a picture of it, but I don't. But my favorite mural was this young woman holding a baby stroller with a baby and trying to get up the steps to the train. And I thought that is the most New York picture I've ever seen in my life, because that, to me, that's been like who I idolized my whole life. These mothers, these young mothers who have these babies who have to get up the steps in the subway somehow to get up on the street, which is a metaphor for their life. And because I know so many single mothers, I know so many people in my life who've had to overcome that challenge, and they might look at it as a gift. You know, they love their child, the child does well, but I think it's really difficult and challenging to be a single parent. And I just, you know, I look at that mural and I just think somebody captured New York City, like the power, the resilience, the integrity, the love, the strength, the vulnerability of somebody who has to raise a child all by herself and practically completely falls apart at the beginning of the process, can't see the end of the tunnel. All they see is darkness, maybe a tiny little light at the end of that tunnel, but they just see darkness and they're like, I'm never going to get out of this. And there's mud and there's all kinds of crap around them and they can't even see and they just can't get there. And they're just kind of trudging through, but yet they keep stepping every day. And you know, then all of a sudden one day they turn around, they got up the steps of the train, nobody was there to help them, they got out, they got to the light, they got out of the tunnel, they got on with their lives, they have a beautiful relationship now with this child that they raised, that they taught how to be a human being, who is now their best friend for the rest of their lives, somebody who they can be proud of, somebody who's going to be proud of them. But time moves, because before you know it, that little person is 7 and 14 and 21 and 30 and 45 and 60. Maybe that person is now taking care of you as you are at the end of your time. Because the end of your time is going to come. Think about it. Think about what you were doing just before the pandemic. And understand that that was over 5 years ago. 5 years, a half a decade has gone by since the pandemic. 5 years. Twice that amount of time is a decade. That's 10 years. So I'm just saying, if you have the desire to have a YouTube channel, the desire to make a movie, the desire to write a play, to be a performing artist, to get up on stage at an open mic, if you have the desire to start a business, if you have the desire to get healthy, if you have the desire to, you know, buy a car or whatever, you have goals and they seem overwhelming and your credit is fucked up and your life is all in disarray, just start understanding, begin with understanding that time is flying by. And whether you start or not, time is going to keep moving. And any opportunity that you might have right now is going to be a day less tomorrow. And then 2 days less 2 days after that. And if you look in terms of my metaphor with the pandemic, 5 years could go by like that. And then you're 5 years further away from starting. And imagine what you could have done if you started 5 years ago, or 2 days ago, or 10 days ago. If you got some knowledge, you read about it, you watched videos about it, you asked questions about it, you stepped out there and went and, you know, I don't know, talked to the person who you love and had real conversations with them and stopped fucking around, or, you know, wrote that song that you've been meaning to write, or, you know, learn some scales to become a better jazz player, or, you know, memorize that script and go do a solo play so that you don't have to wait to be cast in something. You know, make your own work. You're an artist. Do whatever you want to do and do it now. You know, I made a video similar to this the other day about time, and it's so true, but I was thinking about it today. You know, I saw a good friend of mine today and we hadn't seen each other in quite a while, and she'd been through a rough time, like a kind of a health crisis, and I've been through a lot of tough times, and like we saw each other and it seemed like yesterday. I mean, we did see each other, I don't know, maybe last summer, I think. Briefly. I think it was last summer, maybe it was 2 summers ago, I don't know, because when time goes by, you start to lose track. You start to lose perspective. That's not a good thing, because the one thing you can never get back is that time. You can't redo it. You could fix it moving forward, at least with your perspective and your attitude and the way you approach things, but what's gone is gone. And that's it. Don't let that happen. Start your YouTube channel. Write a song. Go shoot some B-roll. Do a talking head piece, talk. I didn't script this. I never script my YouTube videos. I script my films. I script my plays. I work my ass off to make that stuff work. And oftentimes I fail, but oftentimes I don't. I do really well. But I set up here every day because I promised myself I would do that. And I'm proud of myself for that. A lot of people might think it's stupid. A lot of people might think it sucks. I get a lot of, snarky comments in here because, I'm not making, whatever the reasons are, I don't care. I got nothing to prove to anybody. I don't owe anybody anything other than being responsible to me, telling the truth to me, showing up. And then the people that it resonates with, if I'm building a community, that's my honor, that's my goal, that's my desire, that's my dream. It's my, a gift to me when people tell me that they've been inspired to do something because of me. That people gather at every video that I make, that they come to see me in a play, that they go see, they're going to come to the Manhattan Film Festival and see the screening of my movie in a couple of weeks. That's a privilege to me. That's an honor. And it only happened because I decided to get in there and do something. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad, the best, the worst. All of that is for other people to decide. It's for you to decide how good I am, how bad I am, whether you like me, whether you hate me, whether you love my art, you hate my art, whether you want to be, have me in your life, you want to be in my life. That's up to you. My whole thing is to do something today. Express myself. Commit to something. Don't negotiate with myself. Have some discipline. Have some grace for myself. Understand when it's time to rest. Understand that I need to hydrate. I need to deal with my nutrition. I need to work out. I need to find some joy in my life every day, no matter what kind of bullshit is going on around me in the world. I need to find some joy, and I need to hold on for dear life to the people who I love and try to have the richest and deepest relationships that I can possibly have with those people. Same thing with my work. Hold on to it like I would die without it. Because one day I'm going to die, just like you. And that's something not to be just shrugged off, because shit happens.